recognize you, Mr. Albert Mchanga, who is representing Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union, and then the gentleman next to you, Professor Urama, Acting Vice President and Chief Economist of the African Development Bank, who is representing the President of the bank, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, my colleagues, Honorable Ministers of Finance who are present, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard, I'm making this statement on behalf of the President of Zambia, President Ichilema, and Stumbeko Msokotwane, the Minister of Finance and National Planning. I am delighted to join all of you at this event dedicated to coming up with a program of action on inclusive growth and sustainable development in Zambia. It is imperative that we harness our resources to realize the first aspiration of the African Union Agenda 2063 and attain, and I quote, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development, end of quote. Let me commend Excellencies Dr. Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the AU, Dr. Adeshina, President of the African Development Bank Group, for agreeing to collaborate on this important project. I also commend the African Union Commission, the AUDA NEPAD, as well as the consortium of policy experts, scholars, and researchers for coming up with a framework to undertake this study on the key drivers of inclusive growth and sustainable development in Africa. What we expect from this study is nothing less than the recommendation fit for purpose in the African context. We're expecting nothing less than delivery of a product that will inform policymakers on the interventions that are needed to further strengthening or restructuring to advance inclusive growth in Africa. We welcome the roadmap to have the study completed by December this year and presented for consideration and adoption at the February 2024 Assembly of the African Union Heads of State and Government. This is because Africa is in a hurry to grow and to develop. In July last year, after the mid-year coordination meeting in Lusaka, I was approached with a request to consider assuming the role of champion on inclusive growth and sustainable development in Africa. Given my strong passion to see Africa prosper, I did not hesitate in accepting the offer. The role of champion gives Zambia the opportunity to contribute in promoting Africa's accelerated growth and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, we expect this study to address, among others, pertinent issues such as how to leverage Africa's demographic dividend to raise employment and produce more, and how to make Africa to progress along from extraction to value addition. Africa's people, particularly its youth, are our greatest asset. Equally, our natural resources, notably our critical raw materials, give us the opportunity to promote green industrialization anchored on strong regional and continental value chains. Our neighbors to the north, Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia, have taken a bold step in this direction by coming up with a joint project on the manufacture of batteries for electrical vehicles. We are on track, and the government of the two countries will soon announce the next steps in the implementation of the MOU that we have signed. Just one example of what we can do collectively to improve our economies. As I conclude, I wish to say what others have already said, which is that getting the African economy to grow can no longer be seen as a pipe dream, especially 50, 60 years after independence. In the 1960s, early 70s, there was perhaps justification in debating or trying to explore what works and what doesn't work. But in the last, from the 1960s, coming to the 70s and 80s, with the examples that we've seen from Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, basically Southeast Asia, and then coming later on from the 1980s, what we've seen from China. I think the story of what works in terms of getting people out of poverty has been clearly laid out in the examples from these countries. And what needed to be done was not rocket science, okay? It was not rocket science. It's something that any country can achieve, provided the leadership is focused on making sure that investment in natural resources, investments in human resources, creating a friendly economic environment, and also making sure that you are integrated in the economic value chain of the world. Because most of these countries you have seen, it was export-led growth that propelled them out of poverty into what they are today. Africa is coming late on the scene, but learning from the experience of these other countries, what they've done, we have no doubt in our mind as Zambians that poverty in Africa can be overcome in the next 40 years. So we look forward to hearing the next steps that are being conducted, and indeed from then to the implementation. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for this opportunity.